Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I'm gonna show you basic adjustments you can make to every single landscape photograph that you have in Lightroom that will immediately make it better, right after this. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome into the video. On this channel, we talk landscape photography. So if you're new here or if you're into landscape photography at all, consider subscribing below. Now, in this video specifically, I'm going to show you basic edits you can make to any landscape photograph that you have in your Lightroom library that's going to instantly make it better. These are those basic edits that you can apply to every single photograph and immediately build upon to make your edits a lot better. So what I want to do is show you these edits by sharing my computer screen with you so you can immediately see the impact that a lot of these edits have. So what I'm going to do is throw it over to my computer screen right now so you can see these. All right, so now that we're in Lightroom, let's go through these 5 steps. And the first step you want to do, obviously, is selecting the photo that you want to edit. Now, you can do that in the library section. Right now, we're in the develop module of Lightroom, and you can do that by clicking develop up in the top right corner of your screen. But once you have that photo selected like I have here, and this is a windmill that I shot in an area called Zaanstans in Amsterdam. Really cool area if you ever have the ability to go visit in Amsterdam. This is an amazing sunset location because the sunset really illuminates these windmills and you have this cool seagrass, and it's kind of like this bay setting that's still close to the city, so it's relatively easy to find and get to. But the first thing you want to do is think about how you want the photograph to look. Obviously, looking at this, initially I want to increase some of the colors in the sunset, and I also want to increase the colors and the exposure of the windmill and the seagrasses. So I know what I want to do with this photograph first. So what I'm going to do initially is scroll through some of my presets, and you can find my preset collection in the video description below. But you just scroll through these and see if any of these presets are going to work. Now, sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, and that's fine. So you just crumb through these and kind of see which one might work, which one might not, and even get an idea of what could look good with this photograph. So what I do is kind of just scroll through these. If I see one, great. If I don't, fine. But what I want to do with this one specifically is start from scratch so you guys can see exactly what edits that I would make to any photograph in Lightroom that would make it better. So the first thing I always look at is getting the exposure right on. And the exposure slider is right here, but I always look at the histogram because that gives me an idea of where my shadows are that are on the left part of the histogram, and it also gives me an idea of where my highlights are that are in the right portion of the histogram. Now you can see here that the exposure is slightly pushed to the left, especially for these highlights, because you want them in this section if you're looking for that even exposure. So what I'm gonna do is just increase my exposure to bring those highlights over. Now it's also gonna increase my shadows, which I may not want. I don't really know. I always increase contrast, so that's one to always watch for and always adjust when you're going through and adjusting these, because it gives you more separation and gaps between your shadows and highlights and just increases that dynamic range throughout the photograph that makes it really compelling. So after you adjust your contrast and you get it where you want it, you start looking through at what else could be good. And I think the exposure is good right here, but the next thing I always adjust for every single photograph in Lightroom, because that's what we're focusing on. Number 1 is the contrast. Number 2, I always increase my clarity. It adds a little bit more detail to the photograph, but you don't want to go crazy with clarity. I always say, watch it, keep it under about 20 for landscape photography based on your preferences and your style. I usually end up right around 15 when I'm increasing this, because when you increase it too much, it makes it very fake looking, very grainy looking. So always keep it like below 20, right around that area. So for this one specifically, I think like right around 15, 17 looks good. We'll just land on 13 there, that's fine. And then the next thing I always adjust for every single landscape photograph is the vibrance. Some people might say increase the saturation, but I say increase the vibrance because the vibrance isn't as harsh as the saturations is, and it makes subtle improvements that the saturation makes those very dynamic improvements, immediately changes the colors. I like the subtle vibrance look, and you can increase it a lot more too. So like where we are at 0 versus where we are at say 15, 18 in the vibrance, I mean, that is a lot more subtle look than a saturation slider would be. And honestly, I barely even adjust the overall saturation for my landscape photos. The next thing that I always do for every single photograph is play with the individual colors. So I don't want to alter the colors. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not doing photo creation. I'm doing photo enhancement here, enhancing a landscape photograph. So I want to look at the available colors and work with what I have. So if you look at the clouds, I can pick out individual colors that I want to play with, and also in the foreground too, I pick out colors I want to play with there. I immediately see some oranges and some yellows and even some pinks and blues. So I'm gonna really focus on the pinks, like the magentas and the sky, and I'm gonna boost those up just a little bit with the magenta saturation. And then I'm also going to increase the yellow saturation for the foreground grasses. And then I'm going to increase those even more with luminance. And basically what luminance does is it makes those saturations brighter. It makes them like glow. That's what I want to do, especially with this foreground grass. I really want it to pop out and show up and really become part of the photograph instead of like an afterthought of the photograph overall. The last thing I'll do to every single photograph, and it's something that I do all the time no matter what the predominant colors are, is I'll come all the way down to the bottom and adjust my blue primary saturation slider. And what the blue primary saturation slider will do is it will increase blues, yes, but it also has this weird effect, and it like almost adds clarity, it almost adds contrast, and yellows and oranges as well. So I just increase that a ton, see what it looks like, and then I'll slowly back it off with the slider until I get to a realistic look that I can work with. This looks pretty good right here at plus 29, and then I see my blues are a little bit too much, so what I'll do is I'll come up to my blue saturations and I'll slide those down just a bit to keep that effect realistic. Overall, that's the single most effective edits in Lightroom that I do to every single photograph to make it look realistic. All right guys, that does it. I know using these edits in Lightroom are going to improve your landscape photography overall. Remember, these are the basic edits that you can build upon with later more advanced edits, but these are those foundations that you can use for every single photograph and make those images better in Lightroom. So that brings me to the question of the day. Are you using Lightroom for landscape photography? And if so, what is your favorite edit to make to a photograph? Comment with those below. And if you like this video or you found it interesting at all, don't be shy, hit the thumbs up, comment with the question of the day, answers, or subscribe to this channel. If you want to keep watching, that's always an option too. Here's a playlist on Lightroom edits for landscape photography that you can watch, or here's a video that YouTube is suggesting that you watch based on those search terms that you've put in already.